Welcome back, everyone, to episode 3 of the Phantom Fuel podcast. I'm RJ, and I'm back with you with another exciting episode. Based on your feedback, we wanted to try something different, and I'm happy to have my first ever co-host on the show, James. Welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks, RJ. I'm pumped to be here. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
Definitely. One thing we're doing moving forward is featuring more voices from the Nebraska Air National Guard. James is kicking things off, but you'll hear from many more folks in the future episodes.
Thanks so much for this opportunity. It's going to be cool to give people this platform to connect and just share stories.
I couldn't agree with you more, James. So before we jump into today's episode, our main topic today for episode 3 is GigEagle. Also in today's episode, we'll be covering the great things you may have missed across the Nebraska Air National Guard, including the 155th and the 170th. But before we do all that, tell us a little bit about your Guard journey, James. When did you join, and what helps you what keeps you here?
So I joined back in 2012. It's been about 12, 13 years that I've been in the Guard total now. I spent all that time in services. That's where I met you. And I've really enjoyed services. Mostly, I think I appreciate all the people that I work next to. We're a hard working group. Everybody's really motivated themselves. And I get to enjoy just being around a lot of enlightened personalities and just really fun people, I guess, to be around. So I guess that's what kind of keeps me motivated and involved in the Guard. And now I get to, volunteer and assist in any other ways to, help around with like this podcast. And it's a great opportunity for those who want to help and add to their performance here in the National Guard.
Exactly. And speaking of opportunities, let's get into the main topic to today's episode, GigEagle. Chief Hruby got a moment over the phone to talk to Captain Winkie, and they were going to talk to us through how this platform empowers members to use their skills, both military and civilian, to support gigs around the world. It's a total game changer.
Sounds like a good time. And without further ado, here's Chief Hruby and Captain Winkie.
The views expressed by our guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Air Force, Air National Guard, Nebraska Air National Guard, Nebraska National Guard, or any government agency. Welcome to the Phantom Fuel podcast. I am Chief Hruby. Today we'll be talking about GigEagle, a DoD talent management product, which harnesses the dual fluency of our reservists who can leverage the private sector capabilities and their military experience. In short, it operationalizes our intellectual reserve. We'll dive into how this tool can impact Nebraska and its airmen and soldiers. With that, I'm excited to introduce the special guest we have here with us today, Captain Davis Winkie, People Analyst for GigEagle, Force Support Officer for the 165th Air Fueling Wing Sustainment Services Flight, and Georgia Homeland Response Forces Fatality Search and Recovery Team. Welcome, Captain Winkie.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. I'm really excited to talk about GigEagle today. So we're just going to dive right in. People Analyst is a pretty interesting title, and you're the People Analyst for GigEagle. So tell me about what GigEagle is and what a People Analyst does for GigEagle.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Chief, I'd be lying if I said I knew exactly what a people analyst does, because it seems like I have my hand in just so many pots on the team. But, let's take a step back and talk about GigEagle. GigEagle is the DoD's first joint real-time talent marketplace that harnesses the power of artificial intelligence to connect reserve component members with short-term duty opportunities based on a full spectrum understanding of, yes, their military skills and experience, but also their civilian skills and experience, which, Chief, I'm sure you'll agree with this. Those civilian skills and experiences have always been a challenge for the military to see at scale.
Yep.
And what GigEagle does is it allows reserve component members to build profiles that strongly resemble what you'll see on LinkedIn. It has work experience, skills, an introduction, patents, publications. It's truly a very analogous profile. And then there is an AI inference engine on the back end that's been trained on millions of different resumes that is able to associate keywords from a member's profile with related skills or related job titles that really acts as like a job search matching algorithm. On the other side of the equation, the gig managers, the people who post gigs for reservists and guardsmen to consider, can be anybody. It can be folks in the active component. It could be folks in the reserve components who have, ADOS funding available, MPA funding, temp AGR funding available, et cetera. And they create a job description. They type in skill keywords associated with that job description. And the platform uses this AI algorithm to generate a list of matches from GigEagle's user base in real time. And the net effect overall is members are able to find opportunities that align with their skill sets. And then people who need talent are able to hunt it down themselves. It really creates this world of talent visibility, both on both sides of the equation, that we strongly believe has the potential to revolutionize how the DoD does business talent-wise. In terms of what a people analyst does, so I actually there was not a job description for a people analyst when they hired me. I actually hired to be our director's exec. It so happened 24 hours after they'd filled the position. And people analyst was what they made for me when they realized that, oh, this guy might be worth something. I used my background as a personnelist to help develop some of our internal personnel policies, manpower spending plans, et cetera. But my role really branched out. I ended up being really heavily involved in customer support, trying to help folks across DoD find the talent they need, including some hands-on work with operational customers. The relationship we developed, Chief. The customer support was a big part of my work there. And then I also turned toward the recent weeks into a special assistant to the director in a lot of ways, where I've been working on his strategic priorities to include organizational transition docs, white papers, high-level briefings. My time with GigEagle really has run the gamut, and it's been a lot of fun, I'd have to say.
You talked about when you were describing GigEagle and the two-sided marketplace and creating a profile and then getting matched jobs. So when you and I connected and I created my profile for the first time, I'm a traditional guardsman working in software development as a product management and product, just product all around. I was actually really surprised at some of the gigs that came back and matched on my profile. And I remember telling you that when we were setting up the profile, I'm like, hey, this one's the first strong match. The title, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. I had no idea that DoD was looking for someone to do something like this. And then actually yesterday, I got another something in my inbox that said, hey, we think you're a strong match for this. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, that's not something I would ever expect to do. And it was just really neat to see the different opportunities and the things that you could impact at a large scale mission basis, and the experiences you get out of it.
Yeah. What you're describing there is I think, indicative of the mindset on personnel and manpower management that many of us in the military have had over recent decades, which is, the military has been languishing, I would say, in an era of industrial talent management, where we have our job codes, we have our skill codes, we have our position numbers, and there's the slots that there aren't other slots, and you're going to be utilized in line largely with those job codes and skill codes, and you're going to have your career life cycle pretty much laid out for you from the moment that you graduate from tech school. And that model was really effective for managing millions of people in a what I'll call a line of best fit manner that will get a lot out of a lot of people. But now we've developed the technologies through things like AI, through these being able to adopt these industry grade applicant tracking systems that are now available through software as a service agreements. The technology is there to move away from industrial talent management into what we at GigEagle like to call agile talent management. Yes, you still need to develop people to have their own military job specialties. That will never change. But the way that we then take those people, continue developing those skills, and then employ them can shift in our eyes. And instead of taking a slot-based approach as our primary driver of talent use, what if we took a problem-based approach and were able to match the right people with the right skills against emerging problems in real time? What GigEagle does, the most powerful thing that GigEagle does, in my opinion, is it validates that concept. If I need somebody who can do, C++, Python, and, Java for some incredibly cursed stack like half these military IT systems are.
Yep.
And I also want them to have a background in flying because maybe it's something to do with refueling. I don't know. I'm shooting from the hip here. GigEagle gives hiring managers the power to find people with that specified skill set using stuff that is way closer to natural language skill-based searching as opposed to the existing method, which is you either got to know the right person you're looking for, or you have to find somebody with God tier accesses to MIL PDS or another services equivalent personnel data system and figure out what unholy combination of SEIs or skill codes represents what you're looking for. And then from there, you've got to find out, okay, well, what are the skills that I need that aren't captured in the current classification system for SEIs and such? And how do I then find out who has them? Agile talent management wants us to really open up that horizon of being able to find all these hidden talents that exist in our members, especially in the reserve components. There's just so much talent on the table that's under our current industrial era model we don't even know that we have. And so hearing you, Chief, describe having these opportunities come to you through GigEagle, and you start thinking of yourself as somebody who's capable of contributing to the mission in ways that you hadn't even imagined before. That's the bigger agile talent philosophy at work. We're trying to open just a new dimension of talent management and talent application in our military.
And it's motivating too. I mean, all of our members are here because they feel a dedication to the mission. And so when they can contribute and give back to the military that's given them so much, it's a win-win for everybody.
Yes. And I'll real quick research aside, because I'm the white paper king, a major predictor of a service member's attrition behavior, according to Army career life cycle surveys, is career satisfaction, like satisfaction within their specific career field. And just letting somebody have that opportunity once or twice that motivates them, that little bit more, can be an incredibly strong pull factor, keeping them in the fold as opposed to watching them leave when their enlistment expires.
Yeah, you can't see me, but I'm nodding my head profusely right now.
Try not to get whiplash.
Thanks. Okay, so how did you learn about GigEagle?
Yeah, so on the civilian side, Chief, I work in journalism. Once upon a time, I wrote for Military Times, and I just had to be aware of a lot of things all the time. And I heard about GigEagle offhand once as a journalist, and I thought that the idea was fantastic. Because I could look in the mirror and be like, oh, I'm a Army National Guard personnel officer, but my day job, I'm interacting with all these senior leaders. I'm interacting with all these strategic concepts. I'm familiar with the big picture in the way that a lieutenant in the Army National Guard maybe shouldn't be, but I am. The idea stuck with me then. And in the late part of 2023, after I'd come over to the Air National Guard, I was trawling some Teams pages looking for resources on some personnel processes. And I came across a recorded webinar that had been taped by our director, now Brigadier General Mike McGinley, and our product lead, Lieutenant Colonel Chuck Kubik. And they were talking about GigEagle and how it was moving into a open, kind of a not an open beta phase. It was still a closed beta, and they were looking for people to be test users. And I briefly sat there and thought, I think this is really cool. Do I ever want to cover this in my journalism career? Or do I want to get in the arena and make a difference? And I decided then I would, you know what? This is way too cool. I want to be part of it. And I fired off an email to them, just asking to be let in and noting like, hey, I'm never going to be able to write about this now, even just because I sent this email. Please let me in. And I got in as a kind of one of the users in the closed beta and set up my profile and looked around. I was like, okay, I like what I see here. There wasn't a ton of volume moving on the platform yet, of course, because it was still fairly restricted.
Right.
But as 2024 wore on, I took an extended period of military leave, and honestly, what could have been something that crushed me instead excited me. I realized, I now can prioritize my military career for at least a while. And I went on GigEagle and I started looking for roles that, aligned with my skills, my experiences, roles that might let me stay local to the South. And I applied to a position as the exec for General McGinley. And I applied and I sent an email to General McGinley, to Colonel Kubik, and to Lieutenant Colonel Jim Perkins, who's one of the Army guys who's worked on the team. And it was, this email was ridiculously forward. I attached my resume. I had a bulleted list of why they wanted to hire me.
Go big or go home.
I was like, well, I mean, what's the worst that happens here? I'm still looking for a job.
They say no.
Exactly. They called me back fairly quickly. said they had filled that job, but might have some extra man days that they could use to bring me onto orders. And that's where the show really started from there.
All right. So let's talk about the product a little bit more. There's a lot of work that goes into building a software product and then getting those early adopters and then trying to get that early majority and bringing that product to life. What was the catalyst that started the GigEagle product journey to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. So the story that General McGinley always tells is so quick background on General McGinley. In his civilian career, he's been an attorney in the past. Now he works on Google's federal accounts and has a very successful civilian career, I'll say. And then on the military side, he was the director of the Defense Innovation Unit's Boston elements shortly after its stand-up, I want to say. And he was on the street in Boston in 2017 calling an Uber or a Lyft. And he had what I like to call a sidewalk moment, which is when all these ideas have been brewing in your head, or you've been doing a bunch of research, or in my case, a bunch of reporting. And then every once in a while, like when you're on the like walking on the sidewalk or something like that, you just get a bolt of clarity where you suddenly make connections that you hadn't seen. And that's what happened to General McGinley that day when he realized, why can't DoD have an ability to call talent at will to solve a problem? I can summon a car with my phone to take me wherever I want to go. Why can't DoD summon the people with the skills it needs to chop on challenging emerging problems at speed, as opposed to the what I will charitably call slow and painful processes
Right.
that existed for getting external help, whether it's getting enlisting MPA days or et cetera. So that was kind of the moment of inspiration for General McGinley, and the Defense Innovation Unit ended up using its commercial engagement stuff to have a bunch of companies come and submit briefings on the concept and how they would operationalize it. Hey, how would you actually do this? And I think 6 or 7, maybe more contractors came in and submitted ideas. And the one that ended up going through is a contractor called Eightfold.ai. Eightfold is a software as a service company that provides like a full suite of talent and career life cycle platforms, I would say, in the civilian sector. The natural decision for the prototype version, which is what we see today, the fruits of that labor, was reserve component members, because that was where we figured there was the most meat, obviously, on the bone. The Air Force might think it's doing a good job compared to the other services because it has, there's one free entry field in VNPF that feeds our career data brief that lets you put in your civilian occupation. I put writer on mine. I didn't know what else to put. And then, if you're blessed enough to be somebody who's entrusted with an airplane, I was always too blind for that. There's like a whole block where you can write about or where you can enter civilian airframes, who you fly for, what kind of hours you have, etc. Like the Air Force is at least to know whether it's part-timers can fly different planes. But as a whole, there's no way using existing Air Force systems and processes for the institution to see the civilian skills and experiences of our members. So the potential of building the prototype based on reserve component members was obvious from day one.
Right.
The prototype opened up to or went into kind of a limited user test phase in the spring of 2023. Later that year, it moved into what I'll describe as a beta phase, where more people who were external to DIU were able to onboard onto the platform so they could try out different things with it. I was let on as part of that. And then the platform itself launched in April 2024 as a open prototype. And as of the start of fiscal year 2025 is now in full production and funded by Space Systems Command and other stakeholders, and is looking to keep on and expand. It's been a long journey since General McGinley's sidewalk moment, but we've got a extremely capable tool in our hands today that commands are already using that commands are already using to find the talent they need for challenging problems.
So that's sidewalk moments. In my civilian career, we help a lot of different industries solve problems. And one of the things that we often say is that everybody has similar problems. And so you can look outside of your own industry and see how others are solving the problems that you are also trying to solve, and come up with some divergent thought process on how to solve your own. And so it's interesting that he just had that aha moment with an Uber and Lyft and how they're solving a similar problem. And it came down to, well, how might we do that?
Yeah. And we mentioned the dual fluency of reservists earlier. To briefly expound on that, we especially as traditionals or drill status folks have, yes, our military career field and our experiences associated with that. It's widely known that if we deploy, we're expected to be able to perform our military jobs. But we also have the career that we pursue on our own time. And that makes us potentially people who have access to multiple different systems of thinking, multiple different sectors. We're able to speak different professional languages and bring different perspectives to problems. And it's a really powerful thing when we're able to harness and integrate that talent.
Have you ever heard the terminology guard bum?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It is the new generation of being a guard bum, with a lot of prestige to it.
In some ways, yes, but in other ways, it tries to make guard bumming more accessible.
Yes.
Or Chief, have you ever heard the phrase DSG plus?
No.
Okay, that's something we at least use in my neck of the woods to describe somebody who is a drill status guardsman, so they're part-time, but they're definitely doing more than 39 training days a year.
Oh, yeah. I'm one of those.
And
then.
for some people, it comes by virtue of seniority or by virtue of their position. Like we had an officer who just retired who did back-to-back group commands as a DSG.
Oh, yeah.
I personally wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. But he flew for the airlines and had helped, was one of the pilots. The pilots had knife fought the airlines into submission on short-term paid military leave and sued them all over the country. And the way that the courts interpret USERRA law for short-term paid leave is actually starting to change because of the pilots. So I'm sure he was doing fine financially the whole time. But a DSG plus, though, is somebody who does that. And what we're finding is that there are a lot of really talented people out there who are willing to do more time throughout the year if it's for things that they really care about and believe in.
Yes.
And yes, Gig Eagle is good for finding talent for tours. But part of the model we're trying to develop as well is, what if you had something that you only needed maybe like 20 to 24 hours of help from somebody on,
Part-time
like
work.
researching a white paper or
Yes.
a consulting report or something, and you were able to use IDT authorities or something similar to compensate them, and reach across organizational lines to find somebody who's truly the right person for the job. Right now, there are some policy and statutory barriers to that having its full potential, but it can already be done in situations where a member's home unit is willing to use some of their IDT periods on something like this. One quick real world example is there's an Air Force Reserve major who is a principal software engineer at a let's just say a tech company where if you're a DoD person and need a software person, this person walks in and says, "Oh, I'm an engineer for X," you would gasp.
Got it.
The Army needed a software engineer to do a staffing prediction model for an Army Reserve base up in Wisconsin, Fort McCoy. Fort McCoy is actually really interesting because it has wild fluctuations in population because it's a training base. It's one of the biggest training bases in the Midwest. Like, they can really expand for big training exercises there, and they do have some predictability. Because of the way that unit-based training is scheduled out in the Army, Fort McCoy will know probably 3 to 6 months out, like what their population on post will be at any given day.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing how to staff the MWR facilities, knowing how to staff the gens, etc., is maybe not as intuitive. And so this Air Force Reserve software engineer developed a model that was able to predict with stunning accuracy based on historical data of like observed needs compared to historical training population. She developed a model that let them predict what they need to staff the MWRs based on whatever the training population is projected to be. And she did that using her IDT periods from her home unit, because she's an individual reservist and was going to do more AT days or MPA days rather than using all of her IDTs. And so her unit was like, "Oh, you want to do this in the evenings over the course of the week? Yeah, sure, that's great. We'll pay you 1 drill period per day," or something like that. And so she was able to work across like service branch lines to solve what I'm sure was an incredibly vexing problem for this little Army Reserve post, in a way that under our existing model of thinking about talent and thinking about solving problems in DoD, this is inconceivable.
Right.
Nobody would even think to do something like that. But it's what's possible under this concept and with this platform.
Yeah, more than likely, they would have just continued to experience the pain, and then the experience for those people that were there would just continue to be not wonderful.
Exactly. And so while Gig Eagle is probably an ace in the hole for guard bums out there, now what I will say is, like, if you want to have the most success on Gig Eagle, develop a real resume, real experience, real skill set. Don't let it be a stand-in for just finding easy paychecks.
Right.
But what we want to do is create a marketplace where there's even just project-based work, where somebody with a really great skill set can say, "Hey, I've got some extra time this month. Let me see other ways I can contribute to the mission."
Yes.
And, make guard bumming accessible to the highly skilled talent of a new generation.
I think that's the thing that was really attractive to me on the GigEagle platform, is that I wouldn't have, because I love my civilian job. I'm not going to walk away from it. And so I'm not going to go do an MPA tour for 60 to 90 days, because that'd put my company in a bad spot. But I would be willing to pull some weekends and some nights if my skill set, similar to the individual you talked about, would be helpful to something, and I could do it on my time.
Exactly. And the big picture idea here with like the agile talent philosophy is we need to be willing to think in different ways about how we're willing to let people work and contribute to the mission. And the idea of on-demand work that's a code that really hasn't been cracked in a lot of ways. There are some corners of our reserve components that do it. For example, the Category E participating individual ready reservists. So the points only IRR participating reservists who are in the Air Force. There's a population of them that are admissions liaisons for the Air Force Academy. These people, they have to stay green on PT. I think, yes, they've got to get their PHA every year. They get their 15 membership points towards retirement. But then throughout the year, other than that, they are just like working with academy applicants in their local area on a as available basis to help them with paperwork, help them do their PT tests for their applications and such. And they record their own timesheets that they'll then submit to their servicing RIO detachments, basically the orgs that do admin support for individual reservists in the Air Force. And they'll get retirement points based on every 4 hours that they recorded on their timesheet. And so they kind of accrue it and submit them, I want to say, either on a monthly or a quarterly basis. So there's some organizations like that are trying to have that be an available model for employing the talent we have. But we really, I think for an idea like GigEagle to reach its full potential with the reserve components, we've got to take pathways to service and make them as accessible and
versatile,
useful, versatile, profitable, even for as many people as we can, to incentivize talented people like you, Chief, to take those nights and weekends and say, you know what, hey, after I put the kids to bed this week, I'm going to work on this. And it just unlocks a new dimension of problem-solving talent across the Joint Force.
Thank you to Captain Winkie for joining us in part 1 of our GigEagle series. Stay tuned next month, where we will continue our conversation about GigEagle, its long-term vision, and how the product can impact the Nebraska Air National Guard.
Welcome back. I told you GigEagle was a game changer. Learning how it empowers you to use your skills is such a huge step forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Really puts you in the driver's seat of how to make more out of just tech school careers, but to make the most out of your skills inside the military mission as well.
Now let's take a moment to recognize some incredible people and events across the Nebraska Air National Guard. First up, a heartfelt thank you to all who retired this past month and beyond. Your service has left a lasting impact in the Nebraska Air National Guard.
Speaking of retirements, huge congrats to Chief Horne, who retired in February after over 40 years of dedicated service. What a amazing long career, and what a great leader to have. His farewell speech was truly inspiring. Amazing careers and well-deserved retirements. Thank you all for your service.
Absolutely. And it's not just retirements. We also saw some outstanding work during the March exercise at the 155th. A huge shout out to everyone involved.
What about the 170th there, RJ?
Oh yeah, they're busy too. In February, they stood up their first guard-only KC-135, had a maintenance change of command ceremony, and accomplished so much more. At the Nebraska Air National Guard, we have been staying in contact all across Nebraska, and as the stories come to us, we deliver them to you monthly right here.
It's great to see so many things happening around here.
Totally. This podcast is all about giving those stories a platform.
I hope we're not forgetting anything.
Oh, I am. Thanks for the reminder. Coming up, do not forget Tax Day, April 15th, the open hangar on April 17th, Easter for those who celebrate is on April 20th, Arbor Day is the 25th.
Don't you have a birthday coming up in April there, RJ?
Oh, yes. Thank you for not letting me forget that.
Happy birthday, RJ.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, let's move on. Well, James, how was your first episode as co-host?
It was pretty fun, RJ. I had a blast, and I can't wait to do it again.
We loved having you, and now in the future, you can host it yourself. Just a quick reminder, GigEagle links are in the show notes, or you can visit GigEagle.mil from a CAC-enabled computer to explore new opportunities.
Yeah, we should definitely check that out. The more you put into, the more you will get out of it.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of the Fans of Fuel podcast. This show is all about connecting and informing our team, and your feedback helps us do that even better. Check the show notes for the anonymous link to share your thoughts. You can email us too if you'd like. We can't wait to hear from you.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow airmen. Give us a rating and a comment to help push this podcast and give Nebraska a voice in the podcast arena, guys. We're now available on all podcast platforms, including Google, Amazon, Podbean, and for any of you helpful fans out there, we're on your phone too. While you're on those apps, make sure to turn on your alerts. Have it come directly across as a banner, because next month we're going to be finishing up with our 2-part series on GigEagle.
Trust me, you'll want to hear how this can make a real difference in your personal and military career.
Guys, take care, stay safe, and keep fueling the mission.
This has been a special co-hosted episode with James and myself, and it's the time to sign off. See you next month.